I'm the Director of Communications here at Lasell. I've been here since August. It's been an incredible experience working with the faculty and the staff and the students. I'm lucky to be in a place where they have so many great stories to tell. There is Eric Turner. I have two daughters at home, 4 and 6-year-old, and when they ask me what I do for a living, I tell them that I help my friends tell stories. And I've been lucky in my career to be at some really cool places and have some great clients that have enabled me to tell those stories. Because at the end of the day, whether you're in media or PR or communications, that's kind of at the crux of everything we're doing is we're telling stories.
We're going to welcome Eric Turner. These are our graduate students. If you want to just explain to them who you are, and we're thrilled that you came.
I'm glad to be here. I'm the Vice President of Graduate and Professional Studies here at Lasell, and I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you for coming.
So tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about my career and how my kind of non-traditional path led me to public relations. A lot of PR professionals start at an agency right out of college, and I didn't. And I think that helped my career. Now, let me just say that my path is not the right path, or the only path, or the best path. It's just the one that I took. So I guess it's the only one I know. So I'm going to share that, and then at the end, I'm going to kind of give you a couple of one specific kind of case study, which I think would be helpful, and I'd love to hear kind of what you guys are studying too with case studies. So, like I said, if you have any questions during the time you want to chime in, please let me know. So, so I grew up in Needham, Mass, which is a couple towns over, and I always wanted to work in sports radio. That's what I wanted to do since I was 5 years old. It was my passion. I remember going to bed every night with my clock radio on, listening to the Red Sox or the Celtics, or Jimmy Myers talking about the Red Sox or the Celtics. So in high school, my guidance counselor asked me point blank if he thought going into radio was a good idea. He didn't think it was a good idea. But I was lucky enough to have parents who supported me and wanted me to follow my passion, and a father who always told me that if I worked hard and I was good at what I did, that I could be successful both professionally and make a little money too. So that was my guidance counselor's biggest fear, was that there are no jobs and you can't make any money. And my dad's philosophy was that if you're good enough, the jobs will be there and the money will follow. After high school, I wanted to kind of go away to college. I ended up down at the University of South Carolina, in Columbia, South Carolina. Didn't know anyone in the state. It was the first place I got into. Ended up there on a whim. And it was a really incredible experience. I majored in journalism with a focus on TV and radio. My first week on campus, being the sports radio buff that I was changing the dials and trying to find a local sports radio station, and I found it and listened to it for a few days and ended up calling up the station and asking if I could speak with the host off the air. He didn't know what was going on. I think at that time that was probably more common than it is now. So he put me on hold and he answered after the show, and I said, I want to come intern for you. And he said, all right, come in the end of the week and we'll talk and see what you can do. I walked in that week, and he said, all right, I need an intern, so you're hired. He said, work as many hours or as few hours as you want. And then he looked at me and said, oh, by the way, Lou Holtz, who was the football coach at South Carolina at the time, he's having a press conference in an hour. Here's a tape recorder and a microphone. Will you go cover it for me? So that was my introduction into media. It began my career as kind of a radio person and a journalist, and it was that kind of experience that really propelled me to my career. I was able to work some weeks 20, 30 hours a week at the radio station. But my senior year, I was producing the nightly show from 6 to 8 that went on 38 stations across the state, statewide show. Really, really cool experience. After college, my guidance counselor may have been right because they couldn't hire me, didn't have any money or any jobs. So I moved back to Boston, and I was ready to start my career back here in the Northeast. Everyone needs a shot, as I like to say, and Phil Kornblut down in South Carolina gave me my shot as an intern, and someone at New England Cable News gave me my shot up here. I went in to interview for an associate producer, kind of a writer's job, freelance writer's job at doing cable news a week after I graduated. And Tom Melville, who I'll never forget, he said, I'm going to hire you. He said, there are going to be days that go by when I don't call you, and then there'll be certain days that I'll call you at 10 at night and need you to come in right away, or 6 in the morning, and you got to come in right away. And he was true to his word. A week went by, I didn't hear, and then one night at 10 o'clock, we started bombing the Middle East, and they called me and said, I need you to come in and work for a couple weeks. So I did, and worked the overnight shift from midnight to 8 a.m. It was an interesting experience, but not full-time. You know, I didn't have a full-time job. During this time, my sister was going to school in Connecticut and was befriended a girl by the name of Berman, who happened to be the daughter of iconic ESPN fame Chris Berman. I don't know if you guys know who Chris Berman is, but so she was his daughter. So I went down to visit my sister every couple weeks, and I would take a stack of resumes and put it in her book bag and say, will you give this to Meredith to go home and give this to Chris? So after about the third time of doing that, I got a call from Scott Pentony. You always remember the people who give you your jobs. So Scott Pentony called and said, we have a screener's job open. You'd be working down here in Bristol, Connecticut from 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. Wednesday through Sunday. Would you be interested? And I said, yeah. I went down, interviewed, and didn't get the job. And I was just devastated. I thought my one shot of working at ESPN, launching my career, you know, I didn't get it. But key to any good kind of PR person, communication person, anything, is relationships. And I kept that relationship. I emailed him once a week, just check in, see how he was doing. You know, sent him, back in the day, you'd send people things instead of email, so I would send him some stuff. And a couple months later, I got a call, and he said a position opened up, same position, you want it? I said yes. And a week later, I was moving down to Bristol, Connecticut, where I like to say I kind of got my master's in working in sports media. You should still get your master's here, but I got my master's at working at ESPN. My shift was 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. Wednesday through Sunday. I screened tape, so I basically would look at tape and make sure that nothing was wrong with the tapes. I sat in the 2 a.m. sports center to make sure everything ran on time. After a year on the overnight shift, I got an opportunity to work normal hours and work in the programming department with ESPN Deportes. I don't speak a lot of Spanish, so it was a unique experience being on conference calls with everyone else who does. That was another kind of situation where I kind of had to adapt and learn Spanish on the fly. And it was really helpful and an awesome experience just being on that campus every day and seeing the passion that people had for what they did. As I said earlier, you know, my passion was sports radio, and I wasn't working in sports radio. I'd always wanted to work locally in Boston at WEEI, which is the local sports radio station. Now there's two. Back in the day, there was one. And I always wanted to work on the morning show. I always found it fascinating, the cross-section of politics and sports and current events. I kind of had a mutual connection with one of the people on the show. He was an update guy who would give updates twice an hour. He knew someone that I knew very tangentially. So I emailed him. And he said, yeah, we have a producer job open. So he put me in touch with the program director, and the program director said, we just filled it. Timing stinks, I'm sorry. And again, I felt like my shot was gone. But I kept my relationships. I would take days off, and I would drive up to Boston from Connecticut to have coffee with the program director, to let him know that I wanted to work there one day, that I was doing good stuff at ESPN, and one day I really wanted to work and produce the morning show at EEI. 2 years later, the job opened up. I saw it online. I emailed. I went in, and that started my career in sports radio. I worked there for 5 years, the best 5 years of my life. My alarm went off at 3:05 every morning, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. I got to experience, I started in May of '07, and in a 12-month span, the Red Sox won the World Series, the Patriots went 16-0, and the Celtics won the NBA championship. And there was an election to boot. We were busy. So it was an amazing experience, and one that I wouldn't change for the world. I met so many people working at WEEI in the morning, both in the media and in PR. I would get 50 emails a day from PR people seeing, would you like this guest? Would you like to meet for coffee to talk about this topic on the show? And it was something that I found that I loved, was networking and meeting people for coffee, meeting people for lunch, bringing them in to meet everyone at the station. going to dinners to network. And it's something that I still do today, and I still love it. And I still try to take out reporters in my job now. Once every couple of weeks, I'll meet a different reporter for coffee. Half the reporters in this town live in Newton anyway, so it's nice to be able to meet them at the Starbucks and say, "Hey, you know, would you love to meet?" And they appreciate that. Sorry, where did I go? Sorry. Then at 31, my life changed. I got married and had a baby on the way. And my wife and I had a long conversation about my career. And was I gonna be in media and radio and TV for the rest of my life, or was I gonna do something else? And she was the first person who believed in me and said, what you've done in TV and radio, you can take what you've learned there and translate that and do in communications. And I spent a year talking to people in the PR world within Boston. And what I learned was that my wife is right about everything. So she was right. They all agreed. Your skills as a member of the media translate to PR. You're gonna have to learn. There's gonna be times when your boss is gonna be older than you because they've been in the business for a lot longer than you have. But if you take what you've learned, you will be successful. And she was right. I would not have received my first PR job without that background in media. I was hired by, remember the name, Keith Gainsborough, the owner of Elevate Communications, a small PR media relations heavy shop in Boston, right on Boylston Street. They needed a media relations person. And I had worked with Keith because he had pitched me stories, and he said, would you like, after I had met with him about talking about making the transition to PR, he said, would you like to come in for an interview? And we talked, and I was hired as the media relations manager there. All I did for 2.5 years was pitch stories to media. I was able to pitch stories for the Red Sox, for the Revolution, Sun Life Financial, Deutsche Bank Championship, a lot of really cool small tech companies. It was an amazing experience. My boss taught me right away how important relationships were. He also taught me how to talk to the media, how to write, how to be brief, and how to continue to build relationships. I spent 2.5 years there and really couldn't have asked for a better place to kind of break into PR. But I was just doing the media relations side of it, and although that's a really important part of it, there's so much more to PR and communications than that. It's the lifeblood of PR, media relations, but if you can't do everything else, you're going to be pigeonholed as a media relations person, which you can be really successful at that, but there's so much else to do. I was lucky that I got a call from Allen and Gerritsen, Tim Reeves, saw my background. He had a similar background. He was the principal at Allen and Gerritsen, a former press secretary for Governor Tom Ridge in Pennsylvania, who made the transition to PR and then bought an agency, which then got bought out by another agency here in Boston, Allen and Gerritsen. Allen and Gerritsen is an advertising agency, and they have a CEO, Andrew Graff, who understands that PR and marketing are really best done when they're done together. And I'm lucky here that at Lasell they understand that. I report to the chief marketing officer. The director of marketing reports to the chief marketing officer. Advertising works great and PR works great, but they work best when they're done together. Advertising, as everyone knows, you say what you want to say, when you want to say it, where you want to say it. I want to have a 30-second commercial that talks about this in this way, and I want it to air at this time. And PR and media relations is the art of getting someone else to tell your story. And in my opinion, that is more impactful than just watching an ad or hearing an ad or reading an ad. Is actually a third-party affirmation. And that's what PR and communications really is all about. So I was able to learn from him on all the different aspects of PR, client relationships, speech writing, managing a team. Those were all things that I'd never done at Elevate, and I was able to do at Allen and Gerritsen. Incredible experience, 3 years there, and then realized that I kind of wanted to go in-house, which, you work in an agency, and I would encourage, if you have a chance to work in an agency, even if you do it for a year, 2 years, the pace, the demand, the stress, which is a good thing, the camaraderie, the friendships you build, the relationships you build, there's nothing like working at an agency to get that, just throw you in, and as they say, drink from a fire hose. And that's an amazing experience I'm so glad I was able to do. that being said, I always wanted to go in-house, and I always wanted to end up in higher ed. My wife's a teacher, and both my parents are teachers. It was almost inevitable that I was going to end up in higher ed. But a lot of higher ed places, companies, or colleges and universities don't want to hire someone without any in-house experience, which I understood. So I ended up for 15 months in between Allen and Garrison and here at a construction company of all places called Consigli Construction, $1.5 billion company, 6 offices throughout the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. Have absolutely no idea about anything PR related. They don't understand. They want to, but they're so busy building the GE headquarters and doing work at the Air and Space Museum down in DC that PR is something that is not top of mind for them. But I was able, and they trusted me, Anthony Consigli and Matthew Consigli, the 2 brothers who own the company. I explained to them how I thought it could help their business, and they're smart business guys, and they understood that, and they gave me room to run. They let me do things that they hadn't done in a while. They understood the value of a good press hit. You know, no one had done it for them before. So credit to them, 2 brothers who have been running a construction company for 25 years. Listens to me and let me kind of do my thing for 15 months, and I'll forever be indebted to them. When I left, they said, next time, Lasell's building a building, please give us a call. Okay, so I gotta let our building in the ground so people know. But I ended up here, and it's been an incredible experience. That being said, I miss working at WEEI every day. When I get up in the morning and I go down, take a shower, get dressed, I'm listening to the show that I used to work at. It's the journalist in me. That's who I am at my core. And I think that will never change. Now, do I want to get up at 3:15 and go work at, hey, come on in. Do I want to go back and work at a radio station, work crazy hours and get in the morning and do all that stuff? No. But if you ever worked in journalism or you ever worked in media, that rush will never leave you. That's why I read 3 or 4 papers a day online. Let's be honest, I don't pick up the actual physical papers unless we're in it. If Lasell's in it, I'm grabbing the papers. And I love meeting reporters for coffee, like I said. I have Twitter up on one screen constantly. I try to follow the news of the day to find out what these reporters are interested in. What are they tweeting about? Not necessarily what are they writing about, but what are they interested in? What are their passions? If you know that a reporter who covers education also is interested in aviation, well then maybe you can find a way to pique his interest with an aviation story that has to deal with Lasell College. You never know. I think, so I guess that's kind of my background. Now I kind of get asked all the time, what makes a good PR professional? And for everyone it's different, but for me, as I've said a couple times now, it's relationships. It's understanding that time is of the essence. It's that being brief, being respectful, and not feeding them BS. And most importantly, the dying art of picking up the phone. And I'll get into that a little later. But the great philosopher Bill Belichick once said, the best ability is availability. And what Keith Gainsborough taught me at Elevate was that if you're doing a good job, 10% of your press hits should be inbound requests. Those come from reporters who trust you and need something. They're on deadline. So they're going to call you and say, hey Ian, I'm doing this story on X, Y, and Z. Can you help me out? Who do you know? What can you help you with? And I'm proud to say that I've never not given a reporter something. Even if one of my clients or someone at Lasell can't help them, I find someone else who can. Because the reality is, when they are gone, when they go to someone else and they get them, they're gone. You've lost them. You've got to be available and you've got to give them what they want. The Lasell community has been incredible with that, and that's why we've been able to generate in my 5-6 months here the amount of press that we have. There was a story in the New York Times about a similar program that we have with our education department, Pathways to Diversity. And so I picked up the phone and called a contact I had at WBZ Radio, who was a reporter there. And I'd worked with them for years. And he said, yeah, he called me back and he said, I got 10 minutes. What do you got? Well, Claudia Rinaldi, who's a professor here, needed to be the one to do it. She was in jury duty. I texted her, I called her, I emailed her. She jumped out of the jury box, did a 10-minute interview, hopped back in, and we got on the air. I'm happy to say that Ben Parker has now called me 9 times in the last 5 months for different stories. Lasell College professors have been on BZ Radio 9 times in the last 5 months, all because Claudia knew how important it was, jumped out of that jury box, did the interview, and now Ben calls me. He's called me for something about the lottery. We've done something about Brett Kavanaugh hearing. We've done something about Whitey Bulger. And every time he calls, we give him something. And he knows now that when he wants a quote, Lasell College is going to give it to him. That was really, I was blown away by the staff here, how they understood that. You don't get that everywhere, and that's really important. So where am I? Sorry. What I also learned being in the media is that reporters and editors and anchors and everyone, they're hardworking, good people. And I think a lot of people who spend their whole career in PR don't understand that. They almost look down at the media as a lower life form at times, and they're not. They're super smart people who are passionate about what they do, who have even less time than they did 1 year ago, and even less time than they did 5 and 10 years ago. Back in the day, a reporter would write 1 story a day, and they wouldn't get in until 10 or 11. They'd go have lunch, they'd have a couple cocktails, they'd meet with sources, they'd write a story, and they'd turn it in at 2 in the morning. That's different. The news desks at the Globe now start at 6, 7 a.m. You're getting emails from the Globe at 6, 7 a.m. stories. I mean, their time is so precious, and our job as PR people is to give them something that can help them. Because if you don't, if you're feeding them stuff that they don't need or they don't want, you're just going to ruin a relationship. Doing research on a reporter is so important because you have to know what beat this reporter has. The worst thing you can do is send a higher ed story to a reporter who covers construction. You know, that just shows that you don't care about them and that their time isn't as valuable as your time. And they'll understand that, and word will get around. The sports editor at the Globe has worked his way up. His name's Matt Pepin. He started out as a copy editor and worked his way up. And I've worked with him his whole career. And I called him on the phone the other day. I had a story for him. He didn't end up doing it, but I said, I'm sorry, you know, I'm calling you. I know you're the sports editor now. He said, Ian, there's only a few people in this town who I pick up the phone when they call. You're one of them because you've given me good stuff over my career. And I don't call them every day. I used to, but not anymore. So that is really important. Talking about picking up the phone, so many people are afraid to pick up the phone, getting hung up on, getting told no. It's almost like sales. You're going to get told no, you're going to get hung up on. It's just part of the deal in PR. But if you do it the right way, if you're respectful, if you show respect for their time and confident that what you have is important to them, then a phone call is clearly and far away the most effective way to get press. And they're going to fight it once in a while. Why are you calling me? I don't like phone calls. Send me an email. But they get 100 emails. If I got 50 10 years ago, they're getting 100 now. But if you can do that, if you can break through the hard exterior, and not even the hard exterior, but just the, you know, when you're busy and someone, what do you need? Yeah, I got no time. You know, it's like these people, they got to be brief, you got to be topical, and you got to give them what they want. And if you do that, then when they call, they'll say, oh, Ian's calling, and he usually gives me good stuff. And that's important. I'm so glad I spent 10 years working in TV and radio, and I'm equally as happy to have transitioned into PR. I'm incredibly excited to be on Lasell. This is an awesome place. The staff and faculty here are really second to none. So I'm not just saying that, Dr. Barrett, you guys are incredible at what you guys do. So I'm going to give a quick case study, an experience I had with a client, how I kind of tackled the problem, and how it showed the power of PR, and how the art of PR is even more important now than it ever has been. So before I do that, does anyone have any questions? Do you want me to keep going? Do you want questions after or now? Whatever you guys want. I can keep going. So why don't I finish this case study, and then I'd love to have a dialogue more, if that's cool with everybody. So I had a client at Allen & Garrity, my first client. Before I started, I was told about this client, toy company called Toy State, based in Hong Kong, U.S. headquarters in Norwood. I was told this client's difficult. I was told he was mean. I was told he was nasty. I was told he yells. I was told he swears. I was told he calls at 2 in the morning. All those were true, okay? He was a tough client. He thought Toy State should be on the cover of the New York Times, on the cover of the Wall Street Journal. He thought that they should get national press, and he wanted national press, and he wanted it right away. I told him my philosophy was that press begets press. So you get press, you get more press, you get more press. And local press often leads to national press. He wanted national press. I had a former intern when I worked at EEI. He was an intern of ours. He was a reporter for the Globe Business section. And back in the day, the Globe Business section had a feature they ran every Sunday called 5 Questions With. So 5 questions with a different business person in New England. So I asked the reporter to have coffee. We went and got coffee for about an hour, caught up, and then at the end I said, listen, I'm gonna give you a hard sell, but I've got this client. He's the president of a toy company, and they're doing some great stuff, based locally here in Norwood. Probably seen their stuff in the toy aisle, Road Rippers, all this stuff, they're all over. Would you be interested in doing a 5, when you do a feature, would you be interested? He said, yeah, I do one every 8 weeks, I can try to fit it into the schedule, don't know when it will be. He called me 2 days later and said, one just backed out, I got an opportunity to do it in a week. So we set up an interview, and I'm sitting in the president's office, and I get a call from the reporter, and he goes, you know what, something just came up, you're gonna have to cancel. I was sitting there, and I can just feel the president's eyes on me, like, I'm gonna hear it. And I heard it, we rescheduled, and he rescheduled to his word, we got it done. So I knew it was hidden. It was gonna hit in September. I think it was September of 14 or 15. And so it's gonna hit Saturday night into Sunday morning, and then be in the paper Sunday morning. Nowadays, the Globe pretty much puts everything online around 4 o'clock the day before, but back in the day it was 2 a.m. So I'm up. I'm in my apartment pacing. I'm like, when are they gonna hit this? It's 1 a.m. It's not up there. It's 2 a.m. 2 a.m. it comes up. I read it. I think it's great. Great picture. Great 5 good questions. Makes him look like a superstar. Email him. 2 a.m. Hey, when you get up, you'll see this. I think you'll be really happy. I go to bed thinking I'm on cloud 9. Wake up and check my email. I had 2 emails. The first one was from him. And it said, let me see, this is not very good, and my picture stinks. So my heart just sank. I looked at the second email, it was from him again. This is a legit email. I actually think it's pretty good. Someone at the gym recognized me. So sometimes the reality is that making your client famous is the most important thing. I learned that from a boss of mine who said that sometimes that's the most important thing. But that wasn't the best part. That Sunday that it ran, the president of a NASCAR team was vacationing in New Hampshire with his family and read the profile. And he said, wow, a toy company that does this kind of stuff, Road Rippers, this fits what I'm looking for a partner. He thought they'd be a perfect fit for the number 7 car that he owned next year. Fast forward 4 months, I'm sitting at the Daytona 500 with the client, getting ready to cheer on the number 7 Toy State car in the world's biggest race in Daytona, Florida. He looks at me at dinner the night before and said, Ian, we would not be here if it wasn't for you. That made everything worth it. All the 2 a.m. phone calls, all the nasty emails, all the swearing, all the temper tantrums, it was all worth it. We are now actually pretty good friends. And my plan worked, and the client was so happy. That was until the car crashed in practice the day before and didn't end up running in the Sunday race. That was a whole nother thing, but the reality was it ended up being a 3-year partnership between this number 7 car and Toy State. That just showed the power of PR, and that press does beget press, and that local does lead to national. And like my boss said at the time, when you can show that a specific press hit led to making money for your client, it doesn't get any better than that. And that's still to this day the best experience I've ever had in PR from a successful accomplishment feeling. So I thought I would share that, and I hope I wasn't too brief, but
no, that's a great story.
But I would love to answer any questions you guys have, or just talk about PR or sports radio, the Celtics. What do you guys think?
Thank you. So does anyone have any questions or any comments you'd like to make?
I have a question.
Go for it.
So after you had graduated and you kept applying to places and hearing no's, how did you stay motivated? Because it's super frustrating.
Getting that first job is the hardest thing. So I graduated in December. I took an extra semester, and so I graduated in December, and I was, I think the important thing is find something, just do something. If you can get a freelance job somewhere, doing something in the field, it's so important. But even if it's not in the field, just keeping busy, showing that you are working. But it's hard. I didn't get the job at ESPN until May of that year, so I was like 5 months without a full-time job. A lot of my friends who worked in banking and consulting, they had jobs lined up before they graduated. I didn't. But that shot that I got working at New England Cable News as a writer, even if you can say that I'm working freelance for X, Y, and Z in PR or in marketing, and especially in PR too, there's so many PR agencies that when a big client comes in, they might not necessarily have the bandwidth to hire someone full time, but they can say, hey, can you come in like 3 hours a day and make calls for us, and or maybe you can even ask, hey, can I come in and do a paid internship, and then you can put on your resume that you're working there because you are, and you don't even have to say internship. But it's hard, and there's a lot of people that shut the door around you, and you need someone to give you a shot, and everyone needs that shot, and I know it's cliche, but you just can't get frustrated because everyone ends up getting a job. It's just the reality, but it can be really demotivating. But even when someone says no, I always take them up on feedback. Why didn't I get the job? Do you have 5 minutes to chat? Why didn't I get the job? Was there someone with more experience? Was my salary request off? Why was it? And I think that will help you. And more times than not, if they'll take the time to do that for you, then you'll get really constructive feedback. And I mean, as you can see, 2 of the jobs that I wanted, I didn't get the first time around. And I kept going, and I kept sending emails, and I ended up, getting both of them. It took a little longer than I had hoped. But great question. It's hard. It's hard. Yeah.
What would you say is the most difficult part about making the transition from journalism? Like you said, the rush is something that I fear missing as much as you as much as you say. So what would you say is the most difficult part about making the transition?
Yeah, so I mean, it's also different for people in different parts of their lives. When I was in my 20s, all I wanted to do was work in sports radio. Now, my family is the most important thing. And, the rush is always, you'll never get a rush like working in TV or radio but there are rushes in PR. When you get a hit, we got a great press hit in the Boston Business Journal. President Alexander was featured last Friday. Awesome feature. I'd worked on that for months. When we got it, when I knew it was coming out, like that rush, it's still there. It's just, instead of a 4-hour rush that I got at the radio station every 4 hours that we did the show, I'm now getting them when I get a press hit. Or when someone calls back and says, hey, I'm interested in doing a story on this. Or when a reporter calls. Like, you get that. You still get that, and working on an agency, you're gonna have no problem. If you work at an agency, no problem with the rushes, because that pace is insane. But it trains you and it allows you to be better. So when you want to do something else and transition somewhere else, that pace and that rush that you have working. I mean, the agency life was similar rush-wise to, I mean, you're pitching new business, You're involved in doing multiple things, not only managing clients and pitching media, but you're looking for new business. You're helping going on new business pitches. That's a great question. That was the part of the agency life that I loved the most, was pitching new business. Now, I didn't have the pressure that I felt because I wasn't on commission, but when you're in a new business pitch and you're talking with someone and then they give you the business, that's an incredible rush. So there are a lot of them. It's just not like the sustained rush like working on TV or radio. And President Alexander will tell you, when he worked in TV for a while, and when he would be working, he worked at Channel 9 in New York City, and I heard him say, when he would get tired, it'd be 8 o'clock at night, they did a lot of live shows, he would just go down there and sit in the live studio audience, and that would give him a rush, to go back and do what he needed to do. But working in PR, plenty of rushes, especially at an agency. If you're looking for that kind of pace and rush, then I would definitely recommend looking at an agency, because that'll give you it too. Always.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Anything else?
No other questions?
Of course. Yeah.
I'm used to it.
No, that's great. No, please. I'm happy to answer anything.
Favorite interview?
That I set up?
No, as a journalist?
So I was a producer, so I didn't get to actually do the interviews. But favorite interview, so every Monday morning at 7:05 during the football season, Thomas Edward Brady would call the hotline and I would pick up the phone, and that was kind of a rush, talking to Tom for about 30 seconds. Hey Tom, how you doing? Great game yesterday. Yeah, I got to put the guys on, put down the phone. So that was great. We had we had some great ones at, that's a great question. So ones that I've booked. We had Mitt Romney on when he was running for president. We had John McCain on when he was running for president. We had Doc Rivers on the morning after they won the NBA championship. I'll give you one. So the Patriots won the Super Bowl, or the Red Sox won the World Series in '07. And no one, back then the parades weren't as streamlined as they were. And everyone was like, what are they going to do for a parade? What are they going to do for a parade? So my boss looks at me at 5:55 in the morning and said, what are they doing for a parade? I said, I don't know. He goes, call Mayor Menino. I said, what do you mean, call Mayor Menino? He said, he's listed. Call him up. He's probably up. It's 5:55. I called. His wife answered. I said, hey, Mayor and Mrs. Menino, this is Ian Meropol from WEEI. John and Jerry would love to know. Oh, well, Tom's right here. Let me put him on the phone. Tom gets on the phone. What do you do? You gotta call my PR person. You gotta call my comms person. I'm busy. Will you just come on for like 5 seconds? Just tell us what the parade situation is. Put him on the air, and we were the ones to break the news about the rolling rally and the parade and all that stuff. So sometimes, again, picking up the phone, even if it's Mayor Menino, God rest his soul, but that was a fun one. Yeah, that was fun. Yes.
You talked about family and personal issues, but I didn't hear you say that when you said you made the move. When you and your wife evaluated your getting up at 3 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that was a family decision? You said you were married, you had a child at that point.
I would have never, if I never got married, or if I wasn't married to the wonderful woman that I am today, I probably would still be working in TV or radio. She believed that, we weren't going to be able to, I wasn't going to be able to be around as much, and it was going to be tough on our marriage and our family if I was getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, working late, going to bed early, going on road trips for a lot, and the reality is that the money wasn't that great. The reality was that the money was better in PR, and there was a lot of different factors. My wife never was one to say, I want you to make more money, but all the factors, hours, which I still work a lot of hours, and I still answer emails at night and stuff like that, but I'm home a lot more, and she thought that the radio business is tough. People are getting laid off. The guy who gave me a shot, Phil Kornbluth, down in South Carolina, he was host of the radio show for 35 years, and yesterday he texted me and said they just canceled my show. 35 years. And, he's almost 65 years old, so, he's okay, but, that's the reality. You can get laid off at any time, and you can get fired at any time too if you don't do a good job, but it's a lot more stability in this business. And, my wife was right, and so that was 90% of the reason I made the move was family issues.
You made a move, and that was your dream job.
Yeah, that was my dream job. I mean,
you made that
there was
decision.
definitely some resentment at first. No, I'm serious. Like, am I making the I don't want to say resentment, but did I make the right move? Questioning. I can't believe I just left my dream job after 5 years. What am I doing? And as I got more and more into my career, it was, wow, she was right. And this is much better lifestyle and much more room for growth. I can do so many cool things. I mean, I've worked, the construction company, higher ed, agency, advertising agency. I've done a lot of cool things, which, and a lot of people who were at the radio station when I was there are still there, and they haven't left. And the ones who want to can, because they're pigeonholed. They've been in radio for 20 years, and it's not easy to make that move. That like when you're, when you've been in radio for, a relatively short period of time like me.
I guess I have a question about when you were talking about the pitch you recently did. I think it was for the president, and it took you months. Mm-hmm. So what do you mean months?
It's a great question.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of these features that does Boston business, some pitches don't have a lot of. Okay, let me start over. Let me take a drink of water. I'm getting excited. This is good. So I guess there's two kinds of pitches. There's kind of reactionary pitches. Ones that kindly pitches, right? So Brett Kavanaugh's in the news. He's in front of the Judiciary Committee. We have a professor here at Lasell who can comment on that. So I'm emailing and calling reporters and producers and giving them something that they need immediately. Then there's the long-term pitches. There's, hey, we love, if you're interested in doing a feature on this, like holidays, right? Valentine's Day. People who work in the greeting card business, I have a friend who works in PR, they have a greeting card client. They're doing long-range pitches months out in advance. Hey, I know you're getting ready for your Valentine's Day show. We have a client for you. We have this for you. So with this one, we knew that we wanted to get the president in the Boston Business Journal for an executive profile, which they do every week. Well, those line up months in advance. So we reached out to the editor of the Boston Business Journal and said, hey, would you be interested in doing something on Michael Alexander? Here's what he's doing that is timely, but not too timely, that it can be evergreen, as they say. Evergreen, it can last for a long time. So we pitched it probably in September or October, and they said, okay, we'll get back to you. We followed up again late October, early November. We set up the interview in December, and it came out at the end of January. So that's a long range pitch versus a short more immediate pitch. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. And a lot of client needs will vary, right? A lot of the clients that you'll have, maybe some clients will be all reactionary pitching, and then some clients will be all long range pitching, but most are a mix in between. But as the word that I hate is newsjacking. I feel like that's kind of cheap, but being opportunistic, right? Knowing that the media will be looking for someone to comment on a certain story, and you have an expert or you have someone that can comment on that. And that's not bad. That's helping them do their job. A man by the name of Larry Rasky owns a PR firm that we actually work with sometimes to help us, and he is someone who's been kind of a mentor to me for 10 years. I went to him when I was looking to get into PR. He was the first person I met with, and I said, what do you do all day? And he said, I help my clients tell the truth. Because if they don't tell the truth, my reputation is shot. And that still sticks to me to this day. Some people call PR spin masters and all that stuff. I hate that. You're not spinning. You have to tell the truth. Now, sometimes you can't say things for legal purposes or whatnot, and that's fine, but you can't be deceitful, you can't lie, and you have to tell the truth. And people who don't last in this business. Unless some people do. But that's,
naming names.
Right, but that's so important, just to be able to.
Can you talk a little bit about roundup stories? The one that you gave me yesterday from the Boston Magazine was a roundup, and Michael Alexander is quoted in that, and the president of Simmons College, so that they understand what a roundup story is.
So there'll be a lot of stories that are features, right? So there's a story in the Boston Magazine about higher ed, and so they're going to do a big deep dive, 5-6 page deep dive into higher ed. So they're going to interview a lot of people. Right? They're not going to just interview one person. So we were lucky enough to be one of the people interviewed, or Michael was, and Lasell was an example of a school that was a small, the story was that small private schools in Boston are really struggling. And they talked about Mount Ida, and they talked about Newberry, and they talked about a couple of schools that weren't struggling, and that were doing really well, and why they were doing really well. And Lasell was one of them, and Simmons was one of them. So there you go. Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Well, that was what was in the paper. That was in Boston Mag. But that was an opportunity for us to comment. Now, we didn't know if we would be portrayed in a favorable light or not favorable light. So we had to weigh kind of the pros and cons. So when the reporter and I were talking, I asked for questions ahead of time. Now, some will give you them, some won't. He said, I'll give you a couple questions, but we're going to go for an hour. So this is going to go in a lot of places. So we gave me 5 kind of areas he wanted to hit on. And then I put together a 2-page briefing document with potential questions that I thought would come up. And Michael Alexander and I sat for an hour the night before and went over and we role played. I said, I'm going to ask these questions. He would answer them and I would say, okay, that's good, but let's tweak it and let's do it this way. Or no, you shouldn't say that. Or that came off too harsh. So prep is so important. And I always talk to my clients and people who have never done PR, never done media interviews, that one of the parts of the job you asked about a rush. I love media training because I've seen it from both sides, and I always liken it to golf. No, very few people can go out and shoot 80 right away. You have to play, you have to practice. The only way you get good at doing interviews for a client or for a spokesperson is by practicing and by doing it and by failing and trial and error. And that's something that it's hard for a lot of people because they're not comfortable doing it, but the more you do it, the better you're going to be.
Would you recommend that they do it in front of a camera?
Yeah, if you can, it's super important to do it in front of a camera and to go back and watch yourself, because no one likes to watch. I'm going to hate myself on this camera. I'm going to think I did horrible and look horrible and stuttered and everything. But yeah, if you can do that, it's super important. And having all those BZ interviews that we did, the 9 BZ interviews, I always send them to the people who did it and say, listen to that, what'd you think? I want to go over it. So that's really important. You had a question, sir?
Yeah, I mean, you've been in PR for so long, and you're talking about the relationships that are really important. But my question is, do you think PR has changed since you entered the first time and today?
So
anything about it?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in PR for about 10 years, or 8 years, and then 10 years before that in media. I do think it's changed because it's changed a lot. There are less reporters. Reporters are younger, and they cover more beats, and they have more responsibilities, and it's harder to get a story in now because there's just less outlets. But that is kind of coming full circle because the outlets aren't necessarily shrinking, they're just changing. So yes, there's not as many daily newspapers, but there's more websites. So getting a story placement online now is more important than getting it in the print paper. That's probably the biggest difference. And the news cycle is so fast. It's not a 24-hour news cycle, it's a 24-minute news cycle. I mean, you are on Twitter, and within an hour, different things pop up, and different things are the hot story of the day, and very few things keep attention for a long period of time. So yeah, it has changed a lot, and it's going to continue to change. And that's why I think it's so smart that you guys are getting your masters in this. I'm just talking in general. I'm going to go back now and get my master's, because if you're not constantly, refreshing your skills and learning who these new reporters are and learning the new trends in media, then you're going to be a dinosaur, and you're not going to make it, because there's so many old school PR people that have these clients that have been with them forever, and those people are going away, and they're looking for new, fresh people with different ideas that do things a different way. It's a great question, though.
I'd like to follow up. That is a good question on that. You're working with people in the marketing department here at Lasell, and one of the most important changes that has taken place in communication is the use of data analytics. Do you work with the people in marketing? Can you explain about how you look at the data for the website?
Yep, it's a great
how
question. And Eric actually emailed us about this question the other day.
Really?
So we got a
We're on great minds think alike.
Yeah, so we got a story in the Boston Globe, Mike Alexander, about Lasell Works, which is an undergrad program that our undergrad students can be in. I don't know if you guys have heard about Lasell Works. So it's an opportunity, it's a cost-saving model for undergrad students. There's some compromises. You have to live off campus sophomore year and take all your classes online, but the tuition savings they give back to you, so you ended up saving about $22,000 over the course of 4 years, and your tuition's locked in. So we got a story in the Globe on it. So we knew the story was coming out on this day. So we set up our website that the homepage would link right to Lasell Works, and all of our social media sent everyone back to the Lasell Works homepage on the website. The story hit in the Globe the night before, and then in the Globe that day. We sent it out all around social media, and that day, the Lasell Works page had been up on the website for about a year, almost a year, about eight or 9 months. It was the highest traffic day the Lasell Works webpage had ever had, by about tenfold.
Wow.
And the reason was because and the majority of it was organic traffic. The majority of it was people reading the story or hearing about it, Googling Lasell Works, and it would take them to that website. So we tried to direct them there, but the reality is that PR sent them there because they heard about it. The story was also on BZ Radio that night. I pitched in conjunction with the Globe an interview with Michael on BZ Radio. So that night it ran on BZ Radio. So all that hit, and the website garnered the most traffic on the Lasell Works page that, and Eric sent an email and said, is there a way to see if this is helping, or how can we share this? And my boss was like, let's check it, and it was right. It was the most traffic the Lasell Works page had ever had. So it does work, guys. PR does work. Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna add in addition to when we talk about how it's changing a lot. For example, a lot of the things we do a lot of live shows, and one of the things we
music or
we do music, we do stand-up comedies.
Oh, awesome.
A majority of live. We're targeting a specific audience, but the idea behind it is a lot of the paid advertising that we try to do. We feel that PR right now for us generates a lot more money when it comes to it, especially targeting using. For one of the things we used to do now, when we have a lot of live shows, we do an exclusive setting for people who are very have a strong presence in social media, and we give them free tickets and all of that. And we realized that it hits from them when they just put it on Snapchat. People, there is more sales in that than when you do like a page that, and you're advertising and paying for it.
Have you guys all seen the Fire Festival documentary?
Just watched it.
It is unbelievable. I watched it with my wife. It's a Netflix documentary on this festival. She asked me what I took away from that, my wife, and I said to her, it's easy. PR works. It matters. And that is an example exactly of that. They spent all their money on influencers, and their conference and their festival sold out in a day? And 10,000 tickets, millions and millions of dollars now. Couldn't put the show on, but if you haven't watched it, I would recommend go watch. It's on Netflix, documentary Fire Festival, FYRE, and you're exactly right. Influencers is such a big part right now because these people, they're called influencers for a reason. They have influence, right? And I just got off the. Did any of you guys follow Only in Boston on Twitter or Instagram?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're great. So I've been working with him since 4 or 5 years ago when he just started out. He now makes money. He has to do this full time. So he doesn't post everything for free. And I emailed him and I said, hey, would you be interested in working with Lasell on some stuff? And he said, yeah. He said, unfortunately though, he said, I do this full time to make money. So we had a call with how much he charges per post. And you'd be shocked. So we're not going to go with him. But it's amazing. And the reason is because it's so powerful. You're absolutely right. And a lot of times, you're right. A lot of times you don't need to pay. You just give them a free ticket, or you give them access, and that is just as important. So that's a great question, and you're so smart to do that because that is the way to that, especially with music.
And does he disclose that all of his posts are paid?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Because one of the things we'll be talking about in the class is ethics.
Yep. Well,
and I think that's an ethical question.
And that goes back to the Fire Festival documentary. They paid Kylie Jenner $250,000 for Kylie Jenner.
Yeah.
They paid her $250,000 for one Instagram post, and she got sued. And all these models that posted about it are getting sued because they didn't put the hashtag ad next to it. And now basically everyone puts the hashtag ad when it's an ad.
But then the same thing with the Burning Man.
Yep.
For example, I mean that's how they make their.
Yeah, that's how they do it. All these festivals now, they're selling out through influencers. So it's a great. It works, man. They wouldn't do it if it didn't work, Yeah.
To answer your question, he doesn't advertise.
He doesn't disclose.
He doesn't disclose
Okay.
that he's paid advertisement.
I don't know. I don't think all the things that he does is paid. I think certain things are.
I was gonna say, I don't think the MBTA would pay for him to.
Negative stuff.
Yeah.
No, I think certain things are like something from us. If we wanted to do an Instagram takeover, for us, I think it would cost money, or maybe he's just charging us. But no, it's interesting. The influencer thing is huge. But the ethics thing is huge too.
Yeah, it is. And they're putting together, the students who are in my class are putting together a media relations plan for a nonprofit.
Oh, nice.
So this is a consideration that they have
It's a great idea.
think about. They have to think about influences.
Yep.
They have to think about relationships and who they build
So
relationships with.
it's funny. So when you're pitching journalists, right? Journalists they can't take anything from you. They can't take money. They can't take
Right.
gifts. I've gone out to drinks with reporters or coffee. I try to pick up the tab, and a lot of them won't
Right.
even let me buy them a cup of coffee because
Right.
they're so ethical.
Right.
The influencers, it's not the same thing. They're not journalists, you know.
Right.
They're not. They're influencers, and that's how they make money. So they need something in exchange for that, and that's why a lot of PR people now, you know, bloggers and influencers, like that's a whole. You asked about how PR is changing. Well, that's probably 50% of most. Working at an agency, I would say 50% of your job is PR, is working with bloggers and influencers, and the other is journalists, and they're all kind of lumped in now together when they're so different. It's a great question, though.
Definitely.
It's a great,
Yeah.
it's great,
These are
great
things
question.
that you all should be thinking about as you're working through the semester, because they're very serious issues.
Yeah.
So with, I have friends that have moved into the agency world. What sort of things, because I know they're always busy,
Always.
what sort of things do they have you doing that it's always
Why it's so busy?
like your hand is in so many pies,
Yeah.
and they're all different flavors.
Yep.
Like, what are you
Yep.
doing?
So most agencies aren't all tech or all consumer or all B2B or all healthcare. There are some, but most have they're diversified, and that's because if the healthcare industry goes down, then their portfolio they don't lose all their clients, you know. So you've got to kind of be a master. What is it? Jack of all trades, master of none. So you have to kind of know a little bit about everything, and that kind of helps you kind of figure out where you kind of want to end up. Most people who work at agencies end up in-house, but when you work at an agency, you know you're always busy because you're probably working on at least 4 or 5 clients, and you're pitching new business. And most agencies now have to do their own PR for their own agency because that's competitive. So at Allen & Gerritsen, I worked on Toy State, toy company, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts, Sunoco, 2U, Jewish Families and Children's Services, and the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network. Listen, and I did PR for our advertising agency. So that's like 7 clients. That's kind of why it's always busy. Yeah, so that you always are if you're not working on a client, you're working on a new business. If you're not working on a new business, you're working on agency PR. There's always something to do.
But that's great training.
Totally.
Because
Totally.
you develop
Totally.
a
Totally.
whole sort of laundry list of skills.
And you develop relationships with reporters in different sectors.
Right.
So now I'm
Right.
at a college that has so many different experts, and I know people in so many different reporters and journalists in different areas that I can utilize because I was at an agency. If I had just worked in healthcare and I came to higher ed, it'd be kind of like, well, I have to develop all these new relationships again. But because of that, I kind of have a lot of these relationships that I can kind of fire off when something comes up.
And of course, those reporters change industries too.
Yeah, they do.
Focus. Yeah.
So it's funny. It's a great question, a great point. I'll get to it in 2 seconds. But before I forget, so John Chesto, who writes for the Boston Globe, he wrote for the Quincy or Patriot Ledger when I worked with him first. Then he was the business reporter at the he was the business editor. He was the editor at the Boston Business Journal, and now he's the lead business reporter for the Boston Globe. He's the one that wrote the Lasell work story, and I've worked with him at all 3 of his stops. So you keep these relationships, and just like anyone in their PR industry, they're going to move up. Young reporters move up too, you know, and they go from a small website, Metro West Daily News, Newton Tab, to something else, to the Globe, and the New York Times. So, you know, yeah, it's a great question.
No, I was thinking about the keeping busy that you were also following the media all the time, right?
Oh, always. I mean,
you
it's
have
funny.
those clients
We'd
and at the
interview,
same time.
yeah, we'd interview people for you know, account coordinator jobs, and I'd say, oh, where do you get your news? You know, or are you on Twitter? And if they said no, they were not coming back for another interview. I would recommend everyone gets on Twitter. And Twitter is more important for PR and media people, and Instagram's really important too, but Twitter is a constant news feed. Follow journalists, you can follow reporters, you can follow New York Times, Boston Globe, Boston Herald, anything. I would just recommend you're on Twitter, and when you're working, I have one screen dedicated to Twitter at all times. Every couple minutes, every 10 minutes, refresh. Am I missing anything? Anything I need to be aware of? Oh, something's happening? All right. I have a client here that can do that. let's do it. Let's call the client, get the approval, make the pitch. So Twitter is vital for any, when Michael's story hit the BBJ's last Friday morning, I get a text from Mary Zahner, who taught me so much about PR. She's a good friend.
Oh, right.
Yeah, you know Mary, yeah.
Yeah.
So she texts me at 6:45 in the morning with a tweet that had BBJ article in it. And she said, "Is this you? Did you guys help get this?" And I was like, she knows it. She's on Twitter at 6:45 in the morning, going on the train, going to work. So it's just so important. And I would say newsletters too. You know, a lot of younger people for coordinators saying that get their information from newsletters, like the Skim and stuff like that. That's super important because that is a great recap of everything that happened the night before. If maybe you went to bed a little early that night and you got up and it's in your inbox when you get to the office. Everything you need to know. I get the Boston Globe email every morning. I get higher ed, all this other stuff, and I get 4 or 5 newsletters that are super helpful. So I would definitely recommend signing up for newsletters. You can always unsubscribe, but figure out what you like. What gives you what kind of format you like the best. Who kind of gives you the best info? Maybe some have a little snark. Maybe some make you laugh. But find a newsletter that you really like because I think those are really important. It's a great question.
Any other questions?
Well, thank you guys. I'm over in Hamel House. My office is in Hamel House on the 3rd floor. Please stop by, email me, call me. If I can give any help, internships, first jobs, anything. Just want to have lunch or coffee, which I love doing. There's this guy named Lou Gorman was the general manager of the Boston Red Sox in the 80s, and he always used to say, "The sun will rise, the sun will set, and I will have lunch." That is true for me. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you very much.